damage and the overall cost of the project or the benefit is much more, so then the green signal is given to them. Okay. Main defect. No, in fact, policy implementation is the major drawback. Policy, so they are formulating almost on daily basis. They are also, initiation is slightly a bigger problem. Formulation is not that a problem. Implementation is the biggest problem. Okay. Okay, so we can start today. Chalo, we were doing corruption yesterday. Okay, so we were studying corruption yesterday and trying to prevent it. So we'll be on that same path today. So we'll just have a brief revision for what we did yesterday. So what was the definition for corruption? Any one person. Before that, corruption was the use of public resources for private ends. Okay? The second ARC had given a formula. What was that? MSD minus AM. Okay. Monopoly of the state, secrecy of the government, discretion of the officers, and accountability. Lack of accountability. Now we had studied certain causes. Usme systemic was there and systematic was there. In systemic we studied political, administrative, economic, and socio-cultural. Alright. Then we studied the outcomes of corruption, which was rent seeking, quid pro quo, what else? The international perception. Yes. Negative impact on the investment climate in a country, parallel economy, and all those points. I hope that was all clear. Okay. So now we'll discuss how to fight corruption. Okay. Write down the topic. How to fight corruption. So batao, how can we fight corruption? Very, very easy question. Technology. Very good. 1 point. Use of ICT techniques, technology, reduction of human interface. Thinking. Awareness about corruption. Okay. I think there is pretty much awareness that there is corruption going on. Maybe awareness about what can be done to prevent corruption. Okay. Okay. Anything else? Fixing accountability, clear defining of responsibilities. Exactly. So streamlining the administrative procedures. Okay, stricter punishments. Rejecting it as a social lacuna. Okay. Yes, वो ethics में पढ़ेंगे. Value enhancement. How to have a strong value system. How to possess integrity, how to possess empathy, all those things. Anything else? Yeah? That will work in paper 4. We'll start that from Monday. It won't really work on paper. The same way a GS4 paper won't make you very ethical. So again, the whole idea of reforming people from a socio-cultural aspect is very difficult, and I don't think it can really happen in a couple of years, but it will take probably decades to happen, or maybe a century or so. Yeah, anything else? Okay, transparency. Social audit, हाँ auditing में आ जाएगा, ठीक है. Okay, so we'll just club these points together. So you can write, as per second ARC report, what is the name of this report? Ethics in governance. Second report, ethics in governance. Multi-dimensional reforms must be implemented. Multi-dimensional reforms must be implemented simultaneously. Multi-dimensional reforms must be implemented simultaneously to fight corruption. So in this, the first heading is political reforms. हाँ तो बताओ, what political reforms can be undertaken? That would be more of a civil services reform. Okay, very good. Bringing political parties under RTA, excellent. Yeah. State funding of elections, very good. Lokpal, okay, very good. Usko we'll bring it under institutional mechanisms, but a good point. Stringent legislation against corruption. Okay, institutional mechanism. Political point of view, say what else can be done? What was the problem that we had discussed? हाँ, electoral reforms. उससे relate करो ना. Pardon? Okay. Fine. So write some points. First is electoral reforms. Within political reforms, first A point is electoral reforms. I'll tell you electoral reforms right now. Electoral reforms. Within that, give the first point. Transparency in funding. Transparency in funding. Which can be achieved. Which can be achieved. Transparency in funding, which can be achieved by state funding of elections, by state funding of elections, comma electoral bonds, etc. Second, decriminalization of politics. Decriminalization of politics. Third, changes in anti-defection law. Changes in anti-defection law. Fourth, reduction in paid news. Reduction in paid news. Then next point, increase awareness among the citizens. Increasing awareness among the citizens. What is anti-defection law? कौन से schedule में आता है? Okay. So how will bringing in stricter anti-defection laws help in corruption, reduction of corruption? Yes, horse trading. So it is seen that a lot of times since, see, the problem with anti-defection law is that it is very strict on the paper, but it is hardly followed because of the discretion of the speaker and the presiding officer in the state assemblies. So because of that, we often see horse trading and different members of other parties being bought and traded by other parties, and huge money is involved in it. Okay, huge money. So that money is obviously not clean or white money. Most of it is transacted from illegal or other black sources. So it is very important that stringent anti-defection laws are in place, and more importantly, they are implemented. So if you start to remove people on basis of anti-defection law once, twice or thrice, then it will be followed strictly. So such steps are rarely taken. Okay. So B karo isme within political reforms. Yeah. No, there is Supreme Court judgments that even the speaker's judgment over anti-defection law is also subject to judicial review. That can be done, but then it's rare that even that will go for judicial review, or most of the times they find some way or the other to not defect the member and keep them. See, decriminalization of politics is if we try to bring in reforms where those politicians who already have criminal background, like there is section 8 of RPA. There was a Lily Thomas case after which, before that there was a law that if you, I mean all of you or some of you might be aware that if you have been criminally prosecuted, then you cannot contest elections in case you have been convicted for a period of more than 2 years. Okay, 2 or more than 2 years. So there was this clause that if during that 2 year, I mean during say you've got the verdict and you've been convicted, right? But you appeal to a higher court. So in that case, till the higher court does not decide your case, you are fit to be a member of the parliament. Okay. So after this case, even this thing was removed. This clause was removed. Immediately you are suspended or removed from the post that you are holding. So if you decriminalize politics, if you reduce the number of these people who are using money and muscle power to remain in power, there is a high chance that the corruption scenario will improve. Alright. B point, bring political parties under RTI ambit. Under RTI ambit. RTI, right to information, ambit, or under the ambit of RTI, कुछ भी लिख लो. Third point, increase the accountability of political class. Increase the accountability of political class. Increase the accountability of political class by introduction of mechanisms like right to recall. So if there is a mechanism of right to recall and the elected members know that if they do something wrong, or tomorrow if a minister is found corrupt, then he may ultimately lose his seat because the members will try to recall him back. Okay, it is a direct democratic device, and it will be very interesting to see if such a thing is brought into place. Okay, and it is a good suggestion which you can give for corruption. Does right to recall exist in India? Yes, in some of the states, in local body elections, this was done on trial basis, still exists in some places. Although the response was not very good, there were a number of problems because there is no way to actually check whether the same people are recalling as the ones who had voted, right? So the whole electoral base which was present at that point of time when the member was elected and the ones who are recalling him are not the same people. And then there is a lot of instability which is created because of right to recall. And in a country like India where funds is already a problem, conducting elections again and again and doing this right to recall process is also a problem. In cases of local body elections, the DM's office was in charge of collecting signatures from everybody. Half of them were forged, some of the people were dead, even much before they had put in those signatures. So there are a lot of problems, especially in a country like India where the population is so huge and the literacy levels are so low, to bring in such devices. But again, you can give it as a suggestion. So second reforms are the administrative reforms. Heading, you can write administrative reforms. Administrative reforms. Okay. So what are the administrative reforms which can be brought in? Batao. Somebody had suggested one administrative reform. Aapka kya tha? Yes. So use of ICT and technology is an administrative reform. Defining the roles, okay. Yes, so less public dealing will actually come from ICT. So whenever information technology or technological advancements are taken place, how does corruption reduce? Because the human interface which is there, that reduces. As long as there is a machine which is issuing you a passport or issuing you a token for your license, there cannot be any corruption. Okay. But the moment you make a person sit there and give him authority, give him a window, give him a seat, and then you see. Okay. So what else? Okay, right. First point, reduce the discretion of officials, reduce the discretion of officials, reduce the discretion of officials by defining clear responsibilities, by defining clear responsibilities. Second point, use of ICT techniques, information communication technology techniques, ICT techniques, and e-governance which reduces human interface, and ultimately helps to solve the problem of corruption. The next point, mandatory citizen charters should be present in every government organization, and must also be revised regularly, Signing off integrity pacts. Next point here. Signing off integrity pacts by government organizations. So what are these integrity pacts? Have you heard of them? So read about them today in detail. I'll just tell you in brief. These integrity pacts are often signed whenever there is a government procurement, okay, and that procurement is of high monetary value, say a defense procurement, a procurement of something, a resource, or a very high amount of monetary amount of goods and services. In that cases, for example, if we are procuring some defense equipment from Israel or Russia, the private organization or the company which is doing so will have an integrity pact with the government, and vice versa, where very clear definitions will be given that there shall be very limited involvement of middlemen, there shall be limited commissions or no commissions, and whatever the deal will have, those points will be there in this integrity pact, and it is mandatory for the two parties to abide by it. Recently also, in the scam that had surfaced in the procurement of these fighter jets and all, yeah, Rafale deals and all, so often you will see in the newspaper that the integrity pacts were violated and all, okay. So that is one of those things. The next point is police reforms. Police reforms are need of the hour, as there is high amount of corruption, involved. Then the third big point, legal and institutional framework. Legal and institutional framework. Legal and institutional framework. First point in that, strengthen anti-corruption laws. Strengthen anti-corruption laws. Strengthen anti-corruption laws by amending Prevention of Corruption Act PCA 1988. Prevention of Corruption Act 1988. Next point within this, protection must be given to whistleblowers. Protection must be given to whistleblowers. In an institutionalized manner. Who are whistleblowers? And they come out. Yes. So whistleblowers are not the ones who you usually imagine of whistling at random places in the market. When we refer to whistleblowers in governance or in administration, they are the people who are public spirited citizens. They may be government officials also, and they come out in public or they declare any mishappening or any events of corruption or collusion that they came across during their experiences or the experiences of others. And in this exposure that they aim to achieve, ultimately their idea is to curb corruption or the menace that is being created by it. Alright, we will be doing whistleblower in detail in ethics. Okay, so abhi itna hi hai. Then the next point, strengthening the power and authority of the three C's. कल बताया था क्या है 3 C's? CIC किसने बोला? CIC नहीं है, CVC, CIC नहीं है भाई, मत बोलो. CAG. How will CIC prevent corruption in an institutionalized? Is it a law enforcing agency? Okay. So when you give more powers to CVC, CBI and CAG, we'll do their reforms also in later classes. Like in previous class also somebody has suggested that. So if more powers are given to these bodies who are actually involved in handling corruption and cases against corruption, the high profile cases where it is very difficult to approach the people who are involved, then it will come, it will prove worthy if these reforms are undertaken. Next point, appointment of Lokpal and Lokayuktas in every state. Next point, social audit should be regularly conducted to eliminate corruption. Local self-governments and urban local bodies can play an important role in social audit. Local self-governments and urban local bodies can play an important role in social audit to ensure transparency. To ensure transparency. Full stop. Civil society and NGOs civil societies and NGOs can also help in this process. Civil societies and NGOs can also help in this process. Now fourth big heading, economic reforms. Economic reforms. Third generation economic reforms. Third generation economic reforms must be implemented. Third generation economic reforms must be implemented. What are third generation economic reforms? Like GST, banking reforms, banking and bankruptcy and insolvency code. This would be a third generation economic reform, etc. Bankruptcy and insolvency code, which had come up recently, right? The whole concept of Chakravyuh that was given in economic survey, that it is easy to start a company, but it is very difficult to exit from it. The average time period to exit from a company was 4 years previously. Now it has been reduced, trying to be reduced to 30 to 60 days, okay, or max to max 180 days. Anyways, next point. Ensure transparency in resource auctioning. By way of e-auctions. In fact, there are dedicated PSUs which are nowadays working in e-auctioning, like State Trading Corporation is there, this one MSTC is there. They are all into reverse auctioning and e-auctioning of whatever goods and services or waste which is there, scrap which is there, and other resource auctioning is also there, okay. So next point, define economic discretions of the officers clearly. Define economic discretions of the officers clearly. So there has to be clear demarcation between what kind of a economic, decision can be taken by a under secretary, what is the economic discretion by a particular district magistrate, a divisional commissioner, a joint secretary, so that there is no gray area, okay. Whenever there is a gray area, then probably that officer in charge might not take any step and somebody else is doing all the things. That may lead to corruption, or probably he may overinflate whatever his capacity of taking an economic decision is and mint money through that, okay. So there has to be clear division of what kind of an economic decision can be taken by a particular bureaucrat or bureaucracy in general, and what can be done by the ministerial class, okay. Now last point in economic reforms, end state monopoly. In most sectors, except strategic areas, except strategic areas. Example, railways, aviation, etc. These are the areas where state monopoly can be ended. What are the strategic areas? Yes, defense, nuclear technology. So these are the areas where probably the government should always stay, and it is right in taking decisions in that domain. But don't you feel that in areas like railways, aviation sector, where there is already a proliferation of the private industry, where there are already big players existing, the government should actually be there? Should the government be there? Yes, in aviation, I mean, there is no point now. They are trying to disinvest and privatize Air India for a long time now, but that they should have done long back. I mean, it has been making losses from decades, okay? And when, I mean, the best of airlines like Kingfisher could not survive in such a competitive market, how do you expect Indian Airlines or Air India to survive in that kind of a market? It is cutthroat competition, and the business of the government is to not be in business, okay? The whole idea of a government is actually to facilitate the private industries to actually work as per their needs. I mean, it is for the government to help and aid them in the resources that they need, the approvals that they need, and not actually compete with them, right? So sectors like infrastructure, aviation, railways, it is very important that the government should gradually withdraw, right? Okay, at one point of time, maybe there were no private air carriers, and Air India was or Indian Airlines at that point of time was the only national carrier, and so till date it has this tag of national carrier. But I mean, there is no need at this point of time, with the pathetic service that Indian Airlines or Air India is providing, that it should actually be, continuing, right? There is no way, even if you try to, like, it gave about 102 crores of operational profit in the last year. But then the backlog or the kind of debts that Air India has of about 5,000 crores, now who will repay that? How many times the government will infuse money into that particular sector just to help that one ailing industry, right? So it is not economically viable, and it also leads to corruption. You don't know what kind of a management they have when there is so much discretion. In a sector like aviation, where you have to make decision almost on, such quick basis, you need people who are very dynamic in nature. You need people who are working for the organization and not for themselves. So in area where we already face corruption and we know that the government is inefficient, there should be gradual withdrawal. So it's high time that Air India should be privatized. That is my view, and I think the view of the government also, but now nobody is keen in buying Air India. That is the problem. Because the international sector is very lucrative, but the domestic sector is pathetic. So people are wanting to buy the international sector and not buy the domestic sector, and the government wants to sell it as a package. Like, कि अच्छी चीज ले लोगे and बुरी छोड़ दोगे. That is not how it is. So you either take Air India completely or you don't take it. When it comes to railways, we had discussed day before also. Complete privatization is not possible at the moment, because railway operation is one area where the government needs some proactive intervention so that the fares don't cross the limit of the common man, the paying capacity of the common person. But at the same time, there are still many areas in the railways also where privatization can come in, right? There is huge manpower in railways. It is the biggest employer of the world. It has more than 13 lakh employees, right? And half of them are useless. Trust me, I have had very close interaction with railways, and I know that. Almost every officer in small areas is having 10 to 12 servants in their house, because there is absolutely no work for them. They're either playing cricket with the kids or doing some other thing in the house, and that's not why they were hired for, right? So if we start to bring in reforms in all other areas, like in railways we say there are core areas and non-core areas. If operation is core areas, there are non-core areas like yeah, exactly, platforms. That a new PSU IRSDC has been formed for that. For advertisements, they are non-core areas. The food and supplies that are given in the trains, I mean, why does IRCTC have to do it? There is absolutely no need. The food is horrible for all the people who've had food in train. They can easily, bring in some private player and using economies of scale, they will ultimately manage to sell in the same prices. And even if they charge 10, 20, 30 bucks more and give quality food, I don't think anybody will mind, right? The whole booking process can also be, you know, instead of always blaming and creating memes on IRCTC, we can probably give it to some big player like Google or other people who have sufficient servers at their disposal to, you know, conduct something huge like this. So in areas where, if you privatize these aspects of railways, there will be no impact on the common man. In fact, the services will only get better with probably bare minimum increase in price. So the government has to think about, you know, gradual withdrawals from these sectors, and that is what we are focusing in economic reforms. Okay, so these were the basic areas which you can highlight. Like, I have given you enough points that you can you can almost write an essay on how to remove corruption. Okay, if you try to expand all these things, incorporate recent examples. So whatever you see in newspapers coming every day, if there is something about Prevention of Corruption Act in section 19, how it is protecting the officers, then Rajasthan amendment, all these things, try to make a note of it. You know, try to include it in your corruption notes. Now, since you have done corruption, it's not possible for me to update every current affair which is happening, because there may not be any classes after this. So it is now your duty, your responsibility, that whatever is happening in the news, either cut it from the newspaper, but I would suggest to make notes out of it. Just write 4 lines, because your brain is like a sponge, okay? I mean, things evaporate very soon. You'll read and you'll feel, "Arey, ye to bahut aasan hai. I am a champion in modern India this time in polity." And after 5 days, you don't know how the president is elected. Who all votes? Abhi bhi main puch lun to आधों को याद नहीं होगा, ठीक है? So try to write, and newspaper is one thing which you will not probably get again also. वो एक बार article पढ़ लिया, you don't remember the name, you will probably not Google, इतनी effort तो you won't do. So it's very easy to just, you know, write 4 points. And now that you have studied all these things in class, you know the background to these things, it will be easier for you to understand any current development that is happening, right? So incorporate that current development in your notes. Okay, so now we'll move on to the next topic, which is very interesting. हो सकता है, बट फिर भी कम होगा ना. नहीं, करप्शन, वायरस से करप्शन कैसे? बट दैट इज थेफ्ट, राइट? वो तो साइबर सिक्योरिटी आर्किटेक्चर को ब्लेम करेंगे आप. वी वोंट ब्लेम करप्शन फॉर दैट. Yeah, so the next topic is civil services, role of civil services in India. Role of civil services. क्या? यार ऐसे तो फिर there are million ways to involve in corruption and do wrong things, but then the basic idea is the moment you remove. नहीं, वेंडर अपनी मर्जी का कैसे रख लेते हैं? बट देन वो बिडिंग तो ओपन प्रोसेस से है ना. You can also provide those specifications, I can also provide those specifications. जब वो e-tender फाइल होगा, तो उसमें जिसकी भी minimum bid होगी, ultimately that guy will win, right? They may try very hard to bring in their person, they may ultimately succeed also. But again, it will become very difficult for the bureaucrats to favor it, to have that favoritism wala approach here, right? As compared to if I am just tough हो जाएगा. Eliminate तो फिर, there are a number of things that will be needed to eliminate, but definitely reduce हो जाएगा. So role of civil service in India, ठीक है? Yeah, that must be in one of the sectors. But whenever you outsource it, the whole responsibility still remains of IRCTC, right? You don't blame those caterers who were there. If you are the owner of a restaurant and you outsource the catering, or you hire some people from outside, I will not blame the chef, right? I'll blame the hotel owner for the quality of food. So if you completely give the whole, not outsource it, but completely give it away to a private sector, a known private sector, who can indulge or who can actually involve completely in these food activities, rather than probably making in unhygienic conditions food in the train, it can be picked up from the nearest railway station or something like that. Whatever reforms can be undertaken, and that same thing can be replicated all over India, and not just in 1 or 2 sectors, right? In some of the trains, they have started with, like Shatabdi has relatively better food. But then how many people travel in Shatabdi, okay? We cannot expect a common man to go there. So gradually there are areas where the government has to withdraw and they should withdraw. Okay, so role of civil services in India. So बताओ what is bureaucracy? इतनी बार हमने term use किया है. What is it? And who does it include? Is bureaucracy? नहीं, diplomats से foreign service वालों को कहते हैं. JS can be of So that's what I'm asking, right? Who all can be said as bureaucrats? What kind of officers? Only Group A officers? Only the ones who are hired by civil services, UPSC examination? Yes. All the levels. Each one of them was a bureaucrat. Okay. So bureaucracy is the framework that the existing government uses to implement their policies, right? So write down a definition for bureaucracy. Bureaucracy is a system slash organization of officials who are selected and not elected on the basis of merit or expertise for the job and they work according to a set of scientifically developed clearly defined rules and principles. So bureaucracy actually includes all three of them, unlike to our common perception of only civil servant that we feel, right? So it will include civil services or civil servant. It will also include officers of the Indian Armed Forces as well as judicial officers. All three will be collectively called bureaucrats, and all Group A, Group B, Group C, all services. Each individual of these services is a bureaucrat, and not just the top shot officer that you imagine in your mind, JS and above, is not only a bureaucrat. And they have different works, okay? They provide protection, they provide justice, and they provide the day-to-day administration that we have, right? But within them, we have civil services, okay? So in civil services, we do not include the officers of the armed forces, we do not include the officers of the judiciary, because then it becomes a separate affair, right? So next heading is civil services. Within this, right, it is seen as synonymous with bureaucracy. It is seen as synonymous, or it is seen synonymous with bureaucracy. However, it can be defined as a body of professionals. However, it can be defined as a body of professionals, comma, full-time officials, who are employed to handle within quotes civil affairs, bracket में लिखो, within brackets, non-military and non-judicial, bracket closed, affairs of the state in a non-political capacity, ठीक है. अब नेक्स्ट हेडिंग डालो, डिजाइन ऑफ सिविल सर्विसेज. डिजाइन ऑफ सिविल सर्विसेज. Okay, so write down, draw this and write down. Civil servants are categorized into three. Yeah, so basically this is union government, this is state government, central civil services, all India services, and state civil services. I'll explain what the difference is and who controls whom. So basically they are categorized into three: central civil services, all India services, and state civil services. So what are central civil services? IT? IRS you mean. So IFS, Indian Foreign Services. IRS what? So Indian Engineering Services, Audit and Account, all those services. Everything else is Central Civil Services. What are all India services? IS, IPS, and Indian Forest Services. This is also referred to as IFS only. So these are the three all India services. There are only three all India services. Rest all of them are central civil services. And then there are state civil services, which are obviously the post of Tehsildar, Block Development Officer, SDM, whatever is recruited by the state government or the state public services. Yeah, all these forms that you fill for UP PCS, MP PCS, Nagaland PCS, Manipur PCS, Bihar PCS, and all sorts of PCS, where the form will come in 1 year, the prelims will be conducted after 2 years, then the paper will get leaked and mains will happen, then after that prelims will again happen, then by that time the next year recruitment has started, then somebody will approach the Supreme Court, and then all 3 years recruitment will get stopped, and maybe by the time your kids are born, you'll be selected in one of them. So that is state services, right? So write down Civil Services of India, Civil Services of India, can be grouped into 3 broad categories. Can be grouped into 3 broad categories. By the way, what is this IES? और ये who recruits the officers of Indian Engineering Services? UPSC. I hope you guys know ये भी एक सर्विस होती है. हाँ, Indian Economic Service भी होती है. And this is also a very competitive exam for all the people who are engineers and by mistake have taken an engineering optional in UPSC and are daring enough to appear with that optional also, can aim for this exam also. It will be not a cakewalk, but definitely something similar that you can have as a good, very good backup option. Okay.
But they don't provide all engineering branches.
They don't provide all engineering branches. That is true. Computer science is not there.
Electronics also there, 60 seats.
But then still, electronics is still there.
So 60 is not there.
That you can't blame 60 is there or not there. There are recruitments where only 5 or 6 are there. You see any of these recruitments of parliament, they'll never have more than 15-20 vacancies. CS and all these are not there, but it's a good option. Yeah, that is also part of Central Civil Service. So almost everything except these 3 All India services, and we'll discuss why they are called All India services. Except these 3, almost everything in the Group A recruited by UPSC are under the Central Civil Services. At times not even recruited by UPSC, but they come under Central Civil Services. So Civil Services of India can be grouped into 3 broad categories. The first is All India Services. All India Services. Or cadre-based services, are the services whose officers are recruited and trained by the union government and then allotted a cadre state. They serve in the cadre state as well as the union as and when the need arises. Thus they are under the dual control. Of union government and state government, which is the cadre state that you are posted in. Okay, so as you can see in this diagram, this All India Services, this is actually coming under the ambit of union government also as well as the state government also, right? So why this happens? Because the officers of all these 3 services are recruited by UPSC. They are allotted their services by DOPT, and they are also allotted their cadres as per your ranking in preferences by DOPT. And now they are trained together. Okay, they are trained by the union government. And where does the training happen? Yes, the initial 4 months are in Mussoorie. And Labasna mein they are trained along with some of these services. And after that, they go to their respective academies, their respective areas for further training. And after their training is completed, they are posted in their respective state cadres. Okay, and they have to serve for, a good chunk of their career they'll be serving in these state cadres. Whether you like it or you don't like it, whether it's good or bad for you, you have to serve there for a very long period. And then the states also have certain powers, certain control over these officers. Obviously not the kind of control that they exercise on state civil services, since they are appointed by them only. The officers of the All India Services are appointed by the President of India, that is Union Government. All of you, once you get into either of these two group of services, you will be appointed by the Honorable President of India. Okay, then you can put up a letter on Facebook. My boss is the President of India. Okay, so that is why the states have limited role or limited power, but again they have enough powers to control the bureaucracy, because they have to function for them only, right? So anything relating to their leaves, anything related, in fact they cannot remove you or terminate from the service, but they can definitely suspend you any day, right? There have been cases. Any case you remember of suspension? Durga Shakti Nagpal, yes, she was suspended by the UP government, Akhilesh government, and that is the authority that the state service also has over the officers of the All India Services. The second point, Central Civil Services. Central Civil Services. Are the services whose members are appointed, trained, and exclusively controlled, appointed, trained, and exclusively controlled by the Union Government. They work exclusively for the Union. Okay. So the members of these service or the officers of these services are recruited by the Union Government. They work for the Union Government, and they are completely controlled also by Union Government only. So for example, you cannot expect an IFS officer or a diplomat to report to the Chief Minister of Bihar, right? Or for that matter, an Indian Revenue Service official, he may have certain contacts or communication with the respective state government, but he reports directly to his boss or directly to the Union Government, right? Even for that matter, all these Indian Audit and Account Service, maybe an auditor is appointed in a certain state and he audits the state government, yet he does not come under the ambit of the state authorities. Indian Engineering Services, the top service in this is Indian Railways. Railways is again a union subject which comes under the domain of the center. So the state will have absolutely no control which train will run from where to where. Obviously they have their own influences, but otherwise on paper, on official record, they cannot control. You cannot say that the divisional railway manager or the GM of an area was posted by the Chief Minister. You will never get to listen that. The orders will always come from the Ministry of Railways, the headquarter of which is in Delhi, and controlled by the Union Railway Minister, okay, or the Minister of the state. Now third point, state civil services. State civil services are the services, state civil services, are the services whose officers are appointed, trained and exclusively controlled by the state government, and they work exclusively for the state government, under its control. The posts in central and state services, the posts in central and state services are hierarchically arranged from group D to group A or group A to group D, whatever you want to write. Hierarchically arranged from group A to group D. ठीक है? So the state civil services is completely recruited by the state public civil services. Okay, state public service commissions. They are appointed by the governor in most of the cases, and they are all their service terms and rules and conditions are all decided by the state services. They can appoint them, they can remove them, they can suspend them. Everything is under the domain of the state civil services. The union has very limited control when it comes to the state civil services. But also one thing you should note, that once an officer of the All India services is under the control or is not deputed, is working in his respective cadre in the state, then he is under the control of the political masters there, right? Whatever postings or appointments that he will have within that state will be done by the state government. Even though his recruitment and his regular promotions, whatever grades that he has to achieve are done by the center, but whatever, like for example, there is a divisional commissioner or there was this prelims question in 2016 that who does the chief secretary of a state is appointed by whom? So it was very confusing. नहीं, chief minister नहीं था उसका answer. So chief minister हो ही नहीं सकता answer. Nobody, the PM and the CM never actually do appointments. It's the two people, governor and president, on whose name the whole appointments, and obviously decisions are taken by the CM only. But then it was very confusing because everybody thought that chief secretary is from the All India service. How can the governor appoint it? And a lot of people had marked. Now people start to find information about it. Then some falana book ke page number 300 pe it was written, no, the CM only appoints. So then the answer key now had CM. Then it was decided, no, it is finally between either governor or the president. Then on one fine day, the posting orders of the chief minister, of the chief secretary of Himachal Pradesh was put up on the internet, and somebody copied it from there. And it read that the governor is pleased to appoint Shri and Shrimati as the chief secretary of Himachal Pradesh, and a lot of people lost 2.75 marks that day. 2.66 jo bhi, theek hai? So the all the appointments in the state obviously are decided by the de facto power, that is the chief minister himself, but they are done in the name of the governor. Okay. Despite the fact that your cadre controlling authority will be always the union. So write down the features of civil service in India. Features of civil servant in India. Civil services in India. First point. Civil services is based on a meritocratic system, that is it promotes merit in work. Okay, so a lot of you would agree that there is a lot of merit involved, and extreme merit is involved. There is elimination on every stage, and a lot of hard work, and only probably the best, or not even the cream, in fact only the cherry survives in the end, right? So that kind of merit is followed in India. That may be due to several reasons, because of the competition that is there, because of the population, and the mad rush for civil services. Okay, I mean, I still don't, I personally feel that it is a very overrated profession. I mean, it is a good profession and you have ample opportunities to contribute, but you cannot just outrightly weight over other professions, right? You cannot say the work of a doctor, engineer, or somebody passing out from a, I am Ahmedabad or Bangalore working for a corporate at senior position is not contributing enough or is not on an important position that of a civil servant. I have never seen interviews of top people getting 100 percentile or 99 in CAT. Nobody knows, anybody will not remember the name of who got 100 percentile in CAT. हाँ बहुत लोगों को क्या 4-5 लोगों को आता है 100 percentile 4-5 यहाँ till rank 800 people will be giving interviews in 100 coaching, right? Top 50 को तो they'll keep asking top 100 को how do you feel like वैसा ही लग रहा है यार कैसा लगेगा like how can things change suddenly overnight? I mean actually you imagine, I also thought that the time I will see my name on the list, you know, suddenly it will start to rain or probably something different will happen. But I was working very close to UPSC office that very day, and since morning it was saying aaj result aa jayega. So whenever such a thing happens, when every part of the country is saying aaj result aa jayega, so there is a high probability कि आज result aa jayega, ठीक है? With the experience that I had with UPSC. And to confirm this, you just have to give a call to UPSC, okay? You ask them आज result aa raha hai. If they immediately within 3 seconds say nahi aapko kisne bola, so the definitely result is coming that day. So I was sure by then. So then there were people who were already standing outside the gates of UPSC. So wo Telegram group pe since 1 o'clock live updates started to come. Now one person is coming, removing the CAPF result. Now new board has come. At 5 o'clock light has come. LED भी लग गई है. बिजली का कनेक्शन नहीं आ रहा था. I am very serious. All these things are happening and each one of us following. Okay, अब LED light लग गई है. अब power भी आ गई है. अब जल गया है. Then we thought, okay, I thought अब light आ ही गई है तो we should also go there. So I was standing there and suddenly these CISF or some guys, they brought those posters and people went mad. Okay, वो मतलब result वाली sheets आ गई and they started to put it and nobody had the patience. Okay, they thought आज तो बस देख लो मतलब और कुछ नहीं करना, including me, everybody. And they had this, you know, glass structure kind of a thing which they pull to put the sheets. Nobody was interested in holding that. Like जिसने पकड़ा नहीं पकड़ा गिराया तो गिराया. आज तो result देखेंगे. And it is really difficult to find your name in that list. And it is very disheartening to not find your name in that list. I had seen a few people who were making video recordings with their parents, you know, to capture the moment. 1 or 2 of them got selected, and this will be a good memory. But the ones who did not get selected would probably have broken their phones or not. In my case, I started to see in the first list, and I saw like पहले में तो नहीं दिख रहा नाम, like चलो expect भी नहीं किया था. Then second or third list के आसपास somebody was standing, I could not actually figure out. So I thought आगे देखते हैं. Then third list, some 2-3 Saurabhs had gone by then. Fourth list में भी 5-6 और निकल चुके थे. Then fifth or sixth list, somewhere around 400 rank, I saw one Saurabh SABH something written, and this is one guy standing there. So I thought, okay, चलो 400 something आ गई. In my back of my mind was like, okay, IRS मिल जाएगा, उतना भी काफी है. देखेंगे एक और attempt देना कि नहीं देना. So all this thought process was going, and suddenly that boy moved, and it was Saurabh Sabharwal. Like यार 400 भी नहीं आई मतलब. Then I kept on looking. I went till 500, 600, 700, and I was there with one of my friends who had also appeared, and he had, you know, said मेरा तो नहीं है. So he was already standing, and after 700 something, I thought आज अपना भी नहीं है. So by then I just suddenly realized that I have not seen the second wala page. So suddenly I moved that guy and like second page देखते, and then I found out that I was the first Saurabh in the list. Like चलो जो भी है मिल गया. So okay, that is the whole story. You will also experience that someday. Where were we? Features of civil services. So it is a meritocratic process, as we have discussed. The second point is, it involves a sphere of competence, that is every position in a bureaucratic organization is supposed to have a well-defined area, of responsibility, of responsibility and work allocation. Okay, so in most of these group A civil services that we have in our country, the good thing is that at least on paper the work allocation is done very smoothly. Okay, almost the foreign policy will be decided by the IFS officer, the general administration by IS, the revenue portions by the IRS officers, and within these services also there is very time bound promotion, and there is fixed pay scale, and there is fixed service condition. The moment you join, you will be probably joining as an assistant commissioner here, under secretary or assistant secretary there, and then after fixed years, okay, 5 years baad you will become this, after 7 years, unless until you do something drastically wrong, there is a fixed thing charted out for you. In 17 years in IS and IFS you will touch the joint secretary level, and so on, right? But that is not the case in Group B services. Group B and C are often on the whims and fancies of the people getting promoted above them, and maybe some committee will come and they wish that wo post badh jayengi and they will get promoted faster and they will reach up the ladder. There is no time bound promotion for them. They may become joint secretary or they may retire a deputy secretary. So these things are not as defined as they are in Group A. So in Group A services, the competence of the sphere of your competence and your work and your service, everything has a very clear charted role. The growth ladder and everything is very clearly defined, at least for a very long period. At least for the first 20-25 years, you don't have to worry about your promotions. Obviously, then there are plum postings, bad postings, punishment postings, wo sab to rehta hi hai. But nobody can actually stop you from getting promoted but yourself, unless you have a vigilance case against you or you involve in corruption or do something of that sort. Your merit within the service will, which actually stops your promotion, will come at a very, very higher stage. Maybe at the level of secretary or say director general of some organization, you may be superseded. A person from a junior batch might come, and a lot of lobbying also happens against that, but then it happens. But then that is mostly based on merit or political connections or whatever the case may be. Okay, so write the third point. Civil services is a career-based system. Is a career-based system. That is, civil servants enter into the system. They enter into a system for a fixed period, within bracket permanent, fixed period within bracket permanent, and they keep getting promoted, Okay, thoda slow jaye. Civil services is a career-based system. They enter into the system for a fixed period, permanent, and they keep getting promoted, on the basis of certain parameters, which gives them enough financial security, particularly after the 7th pay commission, Thus it's a stable career, which gives them enough financial security, particularly after the 7th pay commission. Thus it's a stable career. Okay, we'll discuss this when we talk about lateral entry, which is a very hot topic. Civil services, if you see globally, it is divided into two. One is the career-based civil services that we have in India, and one is the position-based civil services that we have in several other countries. Now in countries like India, Japan, South Korea, we have career-based civil services. What is career-based civil services? That you will be recruited once at the entry point, and your career progression will hence be decided by the rules and the procedures of the government, and only you will be the one who will be, or your batch or your service will be the one commanding that particular ministry or that area of domain or that area of work, right? But in case of position-based civil services, the recruitment is made for that particular position. Okay, So maybe the police commissioner of a certain area, or recently in 2016 in London, the municipal commissioner of South London, the vacancy had come out and anybody could apply, right? Can you imagine that a position of district magistrate, there is a form coming, okay, Lucknow ke DM ki vacancy aayi hai. So that will never happen, right? Because it's not a position-based civil services. In United States also it is mostly a position-based civil services. You'll always see that Donald Trump has now hired this person as is this thing, the new, even the Supreme Court judges, this, that, all of them are hired on a particular position and not on a career. And the reason why Indian civil services has a lot of trainings, and where do Indian civil servants go for these IAS officers in their phase 2? Which country do they visit? This time London they went, wo thoda change tha, otherwise they mostly go to South Korea. Because South Korea, Japan at times, because they have a similar bureaucracy, similar hierarchy, similar functioning. Okay, so because of that, they are often trained there, right? So we'll discuss more when we talk about lateral entry, that whether position-based civil services should be incorporated, like recently. No, they are not permanent, because you'll not always be on that position, right? It has to be tenure-based. You cannot be the commissioner of a certain area for 30 years, right? It will usually happen 3 years to 5 years, whatever the tenure is. See, that is a different thing, because in there once you are recruited, until and unless you don't, that is a different thing. But again, you are recruited for that position. They don't have many restrictions like we have in our Indian judiciary, that you have to serve for 10 years there, because there the president can also propose the name of the judge. It only has to be ratified by the Senate, right? So again, it is a very position-based appointment. Okay, so next point, democratic accountability. Democratic. Yes. Okay, good question. State civil services can also get promoted to All India services, and the people who are from Group B Central Civil Services, like the ones who are recruited by SSC, can also get promoted to these services. But it is not as a matter of right. When you become the SDM through state services or a Tehsildar, you cannot say after 20 years that I should now be inducted into the IAS or the IPS, right? It may happen based on the vacancies. It usually happens, but not for everybody. Okay. Initially, it was much better, the scenario, say 25-30 years back. Almost most of the civil servants from the state services after 15 to 18 years used to get inducted, but now it's not the same. Now the IAS, IPS lobby is also very strong. They don't want these state civil servants to come up. Okay. They try their best कि इनको वो last के पहले वो retirement के time मिल जाए IAS, ताकि pension में help हो जाए. Okay, they get benefits in the pension, but not in the service. So it is difficult, but it happens. But say for example, a state civil servant of UP cadre, of UP state, will after, whenever he gets promotion after 25-30 years, or he gets inducted into the IAS, will get UP cadre only. Okay, so then it will not be that again wo cadre preferences and all fill karni padegi. He will be promoted there only. But then there is this always, you know, this is also one of the drawbacks of these services, which we will discuss. Because of the whole elitist characteristic of these services, there is always this, you know, negative image or negative connotation which is used for these promotee officers. Even in the police services, you will see that all the bad work is being, you know, outsourced to these guys. Like the DCP who is coming from a promotee service will have a different kind of a thing altogether. In IFS, so they don't make them IFS only. So IFS A, B kar diya unhone. You will be inducted into IFS B only. You'll never reach into that IFS A, which they think that we are the, you know, we are those 40 people recruited out of the whole country, and they don't allow these guys to come there, which is actually not fair in certain way, I feel, because all these other exams are also very competitive. Maybe UPSC is one notch above, but then there should be a parameter or a fixed way or certain characteristics. If you say, if a state civil servant has an ACR, annual confidential report, of outstanding for 15 years or 18 years, then he should be inducted into these services. We'll be studying in civil services reforms that there are anyway so many vacancies, about 1400 in IAS, 900 in IPS, and IFS ki to baat hi mat karo. Only a set of about 800 diplomats who are functioning all over the world, direct recruits. Okay. So there is a need of civil servants, then why not induct these guys into these services? Okay. But then again, there are a lot of problems of lobbying, and the ones who are already existing in these services, they don't let it happen. Okay, and they have a lot of ego issue. I interacted with a lot of people, senior bureaucrats, and they rarely tell something good about the state civil services. Okay, they feel that these are the ones who are involved in majority corruption. Obviously, I'm sure the state civil services would be blaming these guys only, central and all. तो वो चलता रहता है इनका, ठीक है? तो next is democratic accountability. Promote who? See, the proposal will go from the state government, but it will have to be approved by the union. See, usually it is, I mean, on paper it is based on merit, but then obviously it doesn't work like that. You have to have some good political connections and all for these things to happen. 33% rule is there, that 33%, but then that 33% rule may काफी satisfy हो जाता है through the insider vacancies that you're taking, right? So the insider-outsider ratio, you can actually manage that 33%. You don't need to promote state civil servants there. किसमें? हाँ, but then CEO is equivalent to Secretary to Government of India. That's it. CEO is equivalent to Secretary to Government of India. In fact, CEO of Niti Aayog is extremely powerful. Amitabh Kant. हाँ, he's an IS officer. वहाँ ऐसी पोस्ट पे कभी भी आपको non IS नहीं दिखेगा. हाँ, CEO है, but I mean वो because they have changed the entire nomenclature for Planning Commission to Niti Aayog, so उनको secretary की जगह उसको कुछ नाम देना था, तो they gave it CEO, but for all purposes it's still the same. So democratic accountability. Yeah. We'll discuss that. We have an entire topic in lateral entry. I'll explain that, then you ask me if you're still in confusion. Pardon me for my handwriting. बता दूंगा क्या लिख रहा हूँ. So if we actually understand who is responsible to whom, okay, although I usually do this in ethics, but since we are doing this topic, I'll explain it here only. So yeah, this is political class. There is direct answerability or accountability, whatever term you like, you can use. This is indirect accountability or answerability. This is direct answerability. Okay. So it is often said that who are the bureaucrats accountable or answerable to? Is it to the people? Is it to their political masters? Who are these political masters accountable to? To their governments or to the people? And in general, whenever in ethics you'll see this case study coming very often, that some scam has surfaced or some problem has been taken place, then whose responsibility it should be? Should it be that minister involved, or should it be those officers or that one particular officer who took the decision? He should be fired or he should be suspended. Most often we have seen that अब थोड़ा सा फिर भी it's changing, but it is most often seen that whenever such a thing happens, the minister takes the blame and he resigns, right? If there is a railway accident or if there are multiple railway accidents, the minister for railways will resign. If some incident has taken place in or some financial irregularity has taken place in certain ministry, the minister will take the blame and he will resign. So this brings us to the question, whose moral responsibility or whose decision making ability it is to actually be in a position to take decisions and also to be answerable. So second ARC report actually solves the purpose. इसमें आगे और भी चीजें हैं, outcome, output, वो सब second ARC का ethics में करेंगे, probity in public governance में. यहाँ पे इतना समझ लो that civil servants are directly answerable to political class. The whole idea of political neutrality, whether you like your ministers or you don't like your ministers, whether your personal mindset is of rightist frame or leftist frame or some other third dimension, it doesn't matter, because you have to follow what the political class says. You have to do that, as long as it is legal, obviously. If he says that invest money in Manrega or do these things, then you have to, even though you may feel that it is not a prudent decision, you may write your reservations, but in the end you'll have to do that, because you are directly answerable and responsible to the political class. The political class is directly accountable to the citizens via elections, because these are the people who bring them to power, right? Civil servants on the other have indirect answerability or indirect accountability towards people. They are not directly accountable, but then again they are not unaccountable or unanswerable. ऐसा नहीं है that the DM or the SP can say that okay, you have not elected, we have been selected by a meritocratic process and हम तो UPSC clear करके आए हैं, हमारा क्या बिगाड़ लोगे? It doesn't work like that, because you have indirect accountability to citizens through the political class. They have direct accountability, but you have indirect. You have them through these people. Okay? They will ask you to do certain things and then you will be accountable to these guys, but obviously in an indirect way. तो इसमें थोड़ा सा लिख लो. Civil servants are directly accountable to people's representatives, that is, civil servants are directly accountable to people's representatives, that is, political masters, and these political masters are accountable to the people, and these political masters are accountable to the people. Thus civil servants become indirectly accountable. Thus civil servants become indirectly accountable to people through their representatives. ठीक है? अब political interference is very limited there. Okay, yeah, foreign services, because obviously the postings and all are also decided by a foreign service board, which is chaired by the foreign secretary and the senior secretaries of the Ministry of External Affairs. So even your postings are decided by them, but obviously if the minister wants you to post a certain person as the ambassador of certain country, the MEA can do that. Lobbying is there, yes, for good posts, but then again the political interference is less, because the interaction with the people is less. You will be interacting with mostly the heads of states, with the Indian diaspora abroad, the business community abroad, and not with the local politicians and local people here and there. So wo wala, I mean, that aspect comes into picture. So there is less interference here, and also very less corruption here, because public dealing is less, and also their salary structures are very high. Okay, they don't need to indulge. Most of them are already getting so much white money, because whenever you're posted abroad, there is a very big foreign allowance that is given. You're taken care of completely. Your housing, your house will be furnished, even the cutlery will be provided by Government of India, your utilities, the bills will be paid by Government of India, the education of your kids is also taken by Government of India. You can carry 2 servants as on your starting second secretary post on white passport to wherever you are posted, right? So why will they want to indulge in corruption? That is one thing. And because of this, most of them don't want to come back to Delhi. Delhi आके तो फिर से बच्चों की फीस पे करनी पड़ेगी. Foreign allowance चला जाएगा. So nobody wants to. Most of these IFS officers don't want to serve in MEA. MEA में the people who are serving are mostly these SSC guys who get promoted. Who will want to come and become an under secretary or deputy secretary here when you can be a deputy chief of mission in some big country and meet with the hotshots of that place? So obviously, and they are preferred. The IFS officers are preferred on these missions, and very few of these promotee officers get to go to these good countries. If they become ambassadors also, then you'll never see these promotee guys become ambassadors. Rarely. If they become also, past mein case tha, North Korea ambassador was somebody from the stenographer service or something. That lady was there. But that was because no IFS officer wanted to become an ambassador in North Korea. Even 2 to 3 years into service, they denied, we don't want to be ambassador to North Korea. Pata nahi kal ko kya hoga. So nobody wanted. Now again, I think they have some 5 to 6 years of service officer of IFS. They have posted him as ambassador after a lot of pressure. But nobody, no direct recruit wanted to go. Similarly, in African countries, some of them are there. So there, these guys promoted. हाँ, उसमें there is a classification of A star, A, B and C and all that. So yes, there is a permanent mission of India to United States, and Amnesty is an NGO. Okay, chalo आगे. Next topic. Next topic is rationale of having all India services / cadre based services. Rationale of having all India service or cadre based service. Okay, so what was the basic idea of having this all India service in the first place? Why do we need such an all India services? And what is this all India service character that we talk about? What is this cadre based service that we talk about? Okay, so थोड़ा सा लिखो इसमें historical background है जो Britishers had to control large number of provinces. Britishers had to control large number of provinces which were not only large. Britishers had to control large number of provinces which were not only large but diverse also. Which were not only large but diverse also. Full stop. They wanted uniform application. They wanted uniform application of their policies across the country. They wanted uniform application of their policies across the country. Therefore they created a common set of officers. Therefore they created a common set of officers, that is officers of all India services, who were recruited centrally, officers of the all India services who were recruited centrally, trained commonly, recruited centrally, trained commonly, and had same rules to follow in their respective areas, They created 6 all India services. they created 6 All India services. First one is ICS, ICS Civil Services, ICS. Indian Civil Service भी बोलते थे, Imperial Civil Services भी बोलते थे, तो ICS Civil Services was the first one. Second was the Police Service, Police Services. ICS, second one is Police Services. Third is Forest Services. Fourth is Engineering Services. Fifth is Medical Services. Engineering Services, Medical Services, and the last, sixth one was Education Services. Education Service. Okay, so at that point of time, the whole idea of the British government, because they had to govern a very, very big area, and they wanted that same British policies, the same ideologies should be spread to each part uniformly and by the same set of people or the same group of people. So for that, it was very important for them to create a set of officers or a group of officers who were trained by them, who were indoctrinated by them, so that they follow the same rules and guidelines that were prescribed by the Britishers and preach their ideology, preach their functioning, okay, their way of running the government. So because of which the whole idea of All India Service came. ठीक है, otherwise देखो तो All India क्या है, आप पूरी लाइफ तो एक ही स्टेट में काट रहे हो ना. All India, in fact these services are absolutely non-All India services मेरे हिसाब से तो. You are recruited by the center and you serve almost 30 or 25 years in one state. So what All India character do you have? But the whole idea was that All India means that a uniform set of people serving all across India with the same goals, with the same ideology. Okay, so that was the mindset back then. And they had created 6 All India services. Not just these 3 which we were talking about previously. Also engineering service at that point of time was All India. There was this education services, जो अभी भी कोई service नहीं है, जिसका proposal हो रहा है that there should be a Indian education services and an Indian skill वाला service. वो I think teacher वाला तो अलग है, वो education में आएगा. मैं I'm talking about group A recruited by UPSC में last time there were proposal for 2 services. One was Indian education services and one was Indian skill development services. So that skill development was to be under IES exam, Indian Engineering Service, and this other one, education services, was proposed to be under UPSC one. So we were waiting also last year that this might be added to kuch to seatein badhengi, but it didn't happen. Since 2 years it has been a speculation, but I don't know if you guys get lucky. In fact, even this service for Enforcement Directorate, there was a proposal that be a separate service, because it's a big pool of officers and they have to, you know, bring it from IPS, IRS, IFS, different services, they have to bring these officers. So why not have a completely different kind of, you know, and it would be an amazing service as per me. But the idea is still, I mean, under consideration. It never saw the day of the light. ठीक है, तो ये 6 services थी. इसमें थोड़ा लिखो. Officers of each of these services, officers of each of these services were the right choice, because these officers were well trained and professional in their behavior. Thus emerged as the steel frame of British Indian administration. ठीक है. So similarly, even our Indian constitution also envisaged the same idea. They thought that this should be continued, and the idea of all India services is very important because at that point of time when India got independent, there were a bunch of princely states, a very weak union, states being very powerful because in the Government of India Act 1935 and subsequently the residuary powers were vested in the states. So they had become very powerful. So for the whole idea of the constitution to be unitary with a federal bias, having a unitary structure but at the same time having several features of federalism, it was very important to have an all India service. Okay, a service that is centrally recruited, it is trained by the union government and it can incorporate the policies of the union government at different areas, which was very important back then because at that point of time India was very fragmented and it was a land of different cultures, different languages. So if you recruit an officer of Odisha in Odisha, one of Tamil Nadu in Tamil Nadu and subsequently, then the whole idea of national integration will fail. Okay, which is the reason why we have this new cadre policy also, although wo bhi fail hai, but we'll discuss that on a later stage. Okay, so the basic idea was to recruit them through a common professional and competitive exam and then post them in different states, right? But then again there are several problems also. Like the idea here was to have the set of officers because they will not probably have a regional bias or a parochial thinking or a narrow vision towards things. Say an officer of a particular state will always, since he belongs to that place, will have his own biases, he will have his own thinking, he will have his own experiences and may not be able to integrate into the whole idea of nation building, which an officer of all India service can do, and they do it successfully. You can highlight the difference between a state service officer and that of a all India service officer. The ideologies in most of the cases are very different. The whole idea of working is very different, which is not often seen there. Obviously exceptions are there. There is dead wood in both of them, but definitely it's different in there. I mean, you'll never see these kind of examples that a young IAS officer went on and he had food in the same midday meal scheme and this, that, and wo ek biryani wala collector bro in Kerala and all these things. Obviously they get highlighted more and state civil servants don't. That is again a bias. But then often these things are seen. Okay. But then there are again limitations also of these civil services. वो भी लिख लो थोड़ी. Okay, so you got the point. अब मैं बहुत सारे dictation नहीं दे रहा इसमें. You got the point, right? Why all India services is recruited to avoid this regional bias, to have the central ideology of the state union government to be implemented in different states. These all India officers will occupy top position in states also, and also these same people will come into center. Okay, these all India services, these officers always come to the center on deputation. You might have heard that so and so IAS officer or IPS officer is on deputation to CRPF, is on deputation to Ministry of Health, is on deputation to Parliament, all these things, because they are recruited for that particular cadre or state, right? Their ideal job or their ideal working scenario has to be in that state. Now when they come back to center, it is on deputation. That means it is not on a permanent basis. Although reh jate hain wahan pe, that is a different issue, but they come on deputation. That deputation happens when the central government asks the state government that we want this officer who we have recruited to come back and serve in a certain ministry. With the due approval of the state government, that happens. And these are the same guys who hold these top positions in the ministries. Okay, so to actually integrate the developmental process at both the state level and that of the union level, the same set of officers are there. These are the officers who are earlier working on the grassroots level, formulating policies for Gram Sabhas, districts, then moving on to state. Okay, even a young IAS officer would not start away his, get his posting in the capital of the state or something like that. He will have to serve from a small district. He will analyze the ground realities, the position, what does Gram Sabha have, what problems that the local self-government is having. Then he will gradually move to the urban local bodies, wahan pe kya issue hai, what problems they are facing. Then after say 10-12 years of his career, when he's 15 years, when he's done with his DM postings and all, he'll be posted as a principal secretary in one of the ministries or departments within the state government. That is when he reaches the state government, the capital of the state. Then after that he can come to the center. Most of the IAS officers, IPS, IRS, they prefer to come to center at joint secretary and above posts, okay, because that is the decision making authority you have there. You are actively involved in policy making then. So then these guys come to the center. So they have had experience and they are the same people who were making developmental plans there and now here. So they know. So whenever you're sitting in the center or you're working for the union, obviously you're making plans for the states only, right? These ministries or these departments or these director generals are ultimately working for the states, okay? There's nothing called as union, wo sirf Delhi thodi hai. The center also works for the, you know, complete, exactly, for the states. So since these guys have already worked in the states, they know the problem of the states, they have occupied top positions in the states, they are eligible and they are the right choice for occupying the same post in the center as well, because they understand, they have done enough groundwork, they have done enough field work, because of which they are suited for these positions. Okay, fair enough. अब लिखो limitations and weaknesses. अब यार ये बिल्कुल वैसे क्वेश्चन पूछ रहे हो, कोरा पे पोस्ट क्या करोगे? See, home cadre is allotted or not, ऐसा कुछ वो नहीं है. Home, you have to fill. In fact, as per the new cadre policy, we'll discuss that also. You have to fill your home cadre as your first preference. Otherwise, you won't get it. So if you'll be an insider, so obviously insider हमेशा कम होती है post. There are less posts of insider, but it's not like you cannot get a home cadre. Often I think they don't post you in your home district very often. They make it a point, but home cadre you can get. So limitation of weakness in all India services. Okay, so इसमें लिखो first point. Many experts believe that all India services, the name All India services is wrong or misleading. The name All India services is wrong or misleading because they are neither all India, and nor services full stop. It is not all India because these officers work for most of their lives in a single state. And it's not a service because many of these officers are highly elitist. ELITIST. Elite नहीं होता, elitist. You have this whole mindset that we are superior, we are elite, we are the top people in this district, in this country, and we should be treated differently, we should be treated with utmost respect. So that is the whole idea. Highly elitist or arrogant. In nature. And some are corrupt. Which takes away the service orientation from them. ठीक है, तो first criticism ये है that it is neither all India, that I have explained to you guys. and it is not even a service as per many, because a lot of officers tend to become elitist, arrogant, they do not listen to the public, the ones they are meant to serve, they are not accepting their demands or not agreeing to their request or not agreeing, you know, to have a dialogue with them. They have this whole elitist ideologies, because of which it takes away the service orientation. Okay, now personally I feel that this elitism is reducing a little, especially for the ones who have been born and brought up in urban areas, who have not been, you know, accustomed to these rural elitist mindset, and who do not just appear for, you know, become for the heck of becoming a DM, right, but to get the diversity of work that you get offered in these services. So the kind of people that I now meet with, who are my batchmates and all, it, you know, it appears to me that that elitism is somewhere going. People are not really bothered about the kind of frills, perks that they are getting, but the kind of work that they'll get to do, especially the ones who have been serving in the private sector for a very long time. Their main ideology is not to come into the government sector for obtaining power or something like that. Okay, obviously if you have decision making and authority, you do have certain kind of power at your end, but they want diversity of work, they want different kind of work, they want recognition. That is why a lot of people are coming to this domain, because whatever pay package that you have after passing out from IIM Ahmedabad, ISB Hyderabad or London School of Economics, you'll ultimately sitting in one cubicle with one small computer, or maybe work from home wala whatever that nonsense is, you're doing that and sitting on computer and with absolutely no recognition, right? You do not have any personal identity. You'll always be an employee of Google, you'll always be an employee of that XYZ company. Okay, rarely you can say that I as an individual, I as a officer have done these things, I have decided the foreign policy of these countries, I have made schools, infrastructure in this village, I have helped women do this and that in that particular district. Okay, so there is a lot of self-recognition, a lot of involvement. So unless you do that, the whole idea of the service gets defeated. So this is the first criticism. Second, there are some officers who after working in a particular cadre, become biased towards the cadre state, and lose the broader perspective, ठीक है? So it is often seen that some of the officers, they get so involved in the domestic politics of that state, and then they are so happy working there only, and the whole idea of, you know, a civil servant trained by the union and asked to implement the policies in the state has actually become an officer of the state services only. He is doing things what the chief minister wants to do, him to do. I mean, obviously that he has to do, but he loses that all India service character, that whole spirit of the service which you are trained, with which the government has spent so much in you to, you know, train you in a certain way to work in a state, but you start to do the same activities which the state civil servant is doing, right? You have to go there and act as checks and balances on the other state servants and the state ministry, the civil servants there, on what kind of things they are doing. But if you go and become one of them, it's a problem, right? So this is also one major criticism. Third, Liko, it is seen that officers of the All India services, AIS लिख लिया करो, seen that the officers of the All India services are often used are often used as instruments are often used as instruments by the union government or center to harass the states this is done in scenarios of emergency or president's rule using the governor's position to influence the bureaucracy and hinder the working of the states ठीक है तो बहुत बार there is this accusation against the center and these all India, I mean one of the things that we read in whenever you study polity, you will be reading that India is a unitary country with a federal bias, right? So these unitary features, one of the very important features is all India services. Okay, otherwise if you go to a federal country, you'll always see that for example in USA, the state of Texas, state of Louisiana, they have their own bureaucracy. The union government doesn't recruit bureaucracy and send to these states. Okay, this is a special feature of India only, and this kind of feature is always in a unitary government. And the union government is often blamed by the states that these all India services, they are being controlled by the union and they often impede the work of the states or they try to manipulate things, right? So whenever there is president's rule, the elected government is unceremoniously removed, okay? The state legislature may or may not be suspended, but the elected government is removed. In that case, the bureaucracy has a lot of power, okay? Maybe the chief secretary is independently running the government along with the DGP of police and all these people. So there is a high chance of misuse of power if the intention behind the act was not right. Similarly, if the governor holds a lot of power, a lot of position, like in case of union territories and like Delhi also, the case had been seen and debated very often that LG is influencing the bureaucracy. The LG is he's making all the appointments, he's asking the IS officers to not cooperate with the state government. You must have read this almost, I think more than 100 times that these things were made. Now, I mean, obviously the state government has gone to Supreme Court and they have taken things in their favor now. But these accusations are always there against the All India services that they somehow function to favor the union. And the union also knows that they have recruited these officers. These officers also know that ultimately nobody can remove us except these guys, okay? If the union wants, nobody can even touch you in the state. But if only the union can remove you. It's not actually very difficult for the union also to remove you. There are a lot of checks and balances and a lot of things that you have to protect yourself as a civil servant. But then if the union is hell-bent on removing you, they can. There have been cases. There was an IPS officer, who was he? Gujarat cadre. Sanjeev Bhatt. He was removed like this. I mean, obviously the case was pending against him, but then one fine day Home Ministry decided, chalo isko hatate hain. And the president can only remove you. He can appoint you and he can remove you on the recommendations of the Home Ministry. So whatever the charges, they were leveled against him and he was removed. So All India Services also knows that our cadre controlling authority is the Home Ministry or the union, and we have to, or in most cases we have to agree to what they say, right? Because the state can only suspend us, that's the max they can do. Even that can be revoked if the union intervenes. So ye cheez isliye it gets misused. Now write one more thing, recent kar do isko, recent development. To fight the problem of these officers, to fight the problem of these officers becoming biased, to fight with the problem of these officers becoming biased towards one region of work, towards one region of work, towards one's region of work, ONES, one's region of work, Government of India has revised the cadre policy, in which the officer will not be given one specific state, as an option to choose, rather he will have to select a zone, and give preferences for his cadre, within the zone, thus giving them more exposure, and preventing them from becoming regional, or losing the all India vision, all India vision, VISION, vision. इस बार की कैडर पॉलिसी देखी किसी ने, जो फर्स्ट टाइम 2017 में इंप्लीमेंट हुई है? क्या है उसमें? There are 5 zones. ठीक है? So what used to usually happen that everybody had to give preferences for all the states and the cadres in a sequence, right? So for example, if I am from Delhi, I have to choose my home state as the first state, otherwise I won't get that. So I'll give first preference to my home cadre, that is AGMOT. Second, I may like Rajasthan, I give it Rajasthan. Third, maybe Haryana. Fourth, probably any of the other cadres, Madhya Pradesh, Himachal Pradesh, so on. Okay. So what was seen in this cadre process, that usually people tend to give their cadre preferences based on the area that they are from and from the nearby areas, right? If somebody is from Delhi, he will fill AGMOT as his first preference. Second, maybe Haryana, क्योंकि पास है, गुड़गांव भी आ जाता है उसमें. Third, UP, at least Noida, Ghaziabad तो आ ही जाता है, and still not that far. Then probably MP, and then they'll start to increase the distance. Himachal, and mostly all the north states will be given in the top 8-10 priorities, right? Similarly, for a south guy, he will first give Tamil Nadu or Kerala, whatever his home state is, then next Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, and so on, right? So now what happens is, you may not get the cadre of your first choice, but second will jayega, you'll get third, fourth, fifth. So ultimately, the guys of south are going somewhere in south, the guys of north are getting north, northeast, wale northeast mein. So the whole idea of all India service again gets defeated, right? Because now you are smart enough to choose the cadre of your choice on nearby areas, and then there are very smart individuals who again marry and change their cadres altogether. Okay, which according to me is a very, very big flaw in the policy, okay? Or ideally it should be that since the two of them have to stay together, they should get only one cadre, which should be the decision of the government. Now one guy is from Nagaland, the girl is from UP, why the two of them have to get UP cadre? If the whole idea is to stay together, both of them can stay together in Nagaland also, right? But both they are not happy. then they'll remarry. So nothing against anyone, but yeah, this happens. So कहाँ पे थे यार? So this new cadre policy was now brought in to remove this regional bias. Okay, since north guys were choosing north states, south and so on. So I mean, the whole idea of an all India service or bringing a person from a different state to a different state of working was not happening. So from this year onwards, we were the unlucky lot. The cadre system, the cadre policy was reviewed into 5 zones. Zone 1, Zone 2, Zone 3, Zone 4 and Zone 5. Although nobody will ask you this and it will be used by you in mains next year, but still you should know a little about this. So what they did was that they divided all the cadres into 5 zones. Okay? This started from this year only, and since the cadre policy came into effect a little late, we had to fill it before the interview. Otherwise, mostly you fill it during the mains time only. I mean, with your DAF only. Okay, so Zone 1 had 3, 4, 5 states like Agmut was there. Agmut, this one, Haryana, Himachal, Uttarakhand. They were all in one zone. Okay, Zone 2, UP was there. With UP there was Bihar, there was Odisha, Jharkhand. Then Zone 3 there was MP, there was Gujarat, there was Maharashtra, there was Chhattisgarh. Then Zone 4 was mainly south. This was Karnataka, Kerala, so on. Tamil Nadu. Okay. Zone 5 was the most interesting zone. This was West Bengal plus Northeast. Okay. So अब इस policy में क्या था? Firstly, you have to choose one zone. You have to choose the preference within the zones. I mean, from the zones, you can say that my order is say Zone 2, then Zone 3, then Zone 1, Zone 4, and so on. Okay. And then you have to give your preferences within the zone. Like Zone 2 mein I want UP first, then I want Bihar, then I want Odisha, or maybe here I want Gujarat first, then I want Maharashtra, and then I want MP. Okay, फिर within the zone दिया. अब now how will you get your cadre? Okay. So first say this is the zone preference that you have given, zone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So the system or the software will check whether you are getting Agmut as per your rank or not. There is one insider vacancy for general category and you are rank 1. Okay, मिल गया. You'll get it. Done. If not, okay, if you're not getting Agmut, you will not go to this place. It will move on to Zone 2 first preference. If you don't get UP also, then Zone 3 first preference. If not this, then Zone 4 first preference. Then Zone 5 first preference. So that means every 5th guy is going to Northeast, irrespective whatever rank you're getting. Every 4th guy who does not get his above preferences is going to South India. Okay, this policy was aimed at bringing national integration and actually removing things from your hands. अब जितनी maths, जितनी calculation लगा लो, अब आपके हाथ में actually ज़्यादा है नहीं, unless until you get a rank in top 10, then you can be sure. But the biggest failure of this policy, which I till date have not understood, if somebody understands, please tell me. If your whole idea was national integration and all these things, why the hell did you give an option of not filling a zone altogether? You cannot fill a zone, and you can also not fill any state in between. Okay. So basically, if I have not chosen Zone 5, okay, ये पूरा it's cancelled. I had skipped Zone 5. So Zone 1, 2, 3, 4. The moment I don't get Karnataka, it moves to Haryana. Then Bihar, then Gujarat, then Kerala. I don't get to go to these areas. Okay. And if I'm even more smarter, like I know a lot of people who have done this, I remove 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 this. Okay. Now within the zones also I have very limited options. तो मुझे Agmut मिला तो it's good. UP नहीं तो MP, नहीं तो Karnataka, Haryana. Then I won't go to Bihar. I'll directly go to Gujarat. If not Gujarat, then directly Himachal Pradesh. So now I don't understand what was the purpose of this policy. The people who were smart, who applied some mind, they could gauge through the process. 90% of our batch did not understand the cadre policy altogether. Okay? That was the most sad part. that till date people think कि नहीं नॉर्थ ईस्ट तो anyways मिल जाता, जब भरा ही नहीं तो फिर कहाँ से मिलता. So the idea was that despite you filling whatever here, if everything is exhausted and still you don't get, obviously if I have filled only 3 zones and only 10 states, I have not filled the entire thing. So I may not get these 10 states. What if I am a general category student and I get 90 something rank? I will not get Agmort, UP, MP and these good states which I am aiming for. In that case, in the end, whatever is left, that along with your name or whatever alphabetically, they'll allot. So last में एक lucky draw निकलेगा जिसमें mostly वही सब बच्चा होगा जो आपने skip कर दिया था और वो आपको randomly मिल जाएगा, ठीक है? So it was actually a more intelligent step to choose one of those states which you anyways could have gone, and maybe you have a certain more preference for Jharkhand than Chhattisgarh or Odisha than Bihar, and fill it right here than UPSC letting it decide. Okay? But a smarter decision could be to skip the zone altogether. Because when you skip the zone, you don't go there altogether. Okay? वो sequence यहाँ से ऊपर चली आती है सीधा. So the people who benefited from this were the one, I can talk about general category, will be somewhere जो 80 to 90 या 70 to 80 rank score कर रहे थे and who were smart to do this. Because then they will get somewhere in between because they did this thing. So there was a lot of calculation and thing involved. Nash equilibrium भी लगा रहा था एक बंदा. So there were things. So this is the cadre policy. I don't know what it aims to achieve, but as per UPSC and DOPT, they have tried to go for national integration. Maybe by the time you guys write it, they will realize the flaws in this policy and they'll make it compulsory to fill all zones and all. The other dilemma that a lot of people had ki if we fill only these good states, when we go to the interview, the panel will immediately ask कि भाई आप तो बहुत intelligent थे, आपको सिर्फ एगमोट में जाना है, हरियाणा में जाना है, you want to go to UP, you want to go to Himachal, you don't want to go to Bihar, you don't want to go to Kerala, you don't want to go to West Bengal. Why? So a lot of people were scared, so they didn't do this, they filled these things also. ये भी भर दिया. Not that all of them are good states, okay? I don't have any bias, but they filled this zone also. But then it was their bad luck or other people's good luck. This time the interview panel did not have this page altogether because it was not filled with DAF, okay? So they did not have any information which cadre you filled and nobody was asked any question on your cadre preferences. So this was a unique thing which happened. And there was this third set of people जिनकी अलग ही problem थी life में, were the ones who belong to West Bengal. अब home state है तो आपको इसको first भरना है और जब इसको first भरोगे तो इसको zone 1 भरना है. So with this comes all these other states which you are bound to get. So there were a lot of things. Whatever your cadre policy is, which will most likely be this for the next few years, you should prepare accordingly and think about that. Watch at least 10-15 good YouTube videos or send me some mails. If I have time, I'll respond, but don't just foolishly fill this. You can apply your mind and later on these things really matter. You know, abhi everybody's crying, I'm not getting Rajasthan because of this thing, I'm not getting this state because of that shit, but did you apply mind at that point of time? No. तब तो आपने भर दिया. That is the same case with DAF also. You know, it is very, very sad that, including me also, most of the people, we fill our DAF so stupidly, okay? Because it is before mains. Now you think that abhi mains clear hoga, that's when we will, you know, think about abhi to mains hai, fir interview hai, fir selection hoga. Or maybe this DAF will be used in the interview. What if we don't clear mains? But what if you clear mains? Then this is the DAF which is going to the interview panel, okay? So all stupid things which people write, that is something, I mean, you cannot, at least half of your interview will be based on your DAF, okay? And that is something which you cannot change. If you have written that I have won 6th prize in Antakshari in class 4th, which trust me, I have read on somebody's DAF, is something you cannot change. UPSC is very rigid, very rigid. If you have written something, if you have submitted something, it will not be edited, it will not be corrected, okay? So it is very important to fill your DAF correctly because that's what matters in the interview, okay? So with this, we are done with the whole All India services and limitations. Now we are left with 2 topics, wait. In the next class, we'll be doing reforms in civil services and a very, very important topic, that is lateral entry in civil services, which is very debated. So I want you to read these 2 topics, okay? All right, thank you guys.